Hi there, this is Dave Hawes from Powder Software. In this video I'd like to spend just a few minutes talking about the calculation engine that is present in Chartnado. Now I think it would be fair to say that the vast majority of time spent generating reports and dashboards in any BI or reporting system is calculations. The reason for that is it's very rare for data in the source system or systems to be in proper reporting format. The data from the source system always needs to be manipulated in one way or another to achieve the desired output, be that grouping or filtering out unwanted rows or things of that nature. Now, all BI tools in the world allow you to perform calculations, but the vast majority of tools provide that in the form of a language that they give you and a text editor. So for example, in Power BI, the language is DAX, and you get to write measures in the form of text editors. In Tableau, you get level of detail calculations, and again, you write formulas in a text editor. Chartnado takes a fundamentally different approach in this area. Everything that is calculated in Chartnado is done by building functions using our function builder. And this works by dragging nodes from the left-hand list of nodes onto the canvas and building them up piece by piece so that you can see what's going on at every stage of the calculation. And the reason behind this is simple. Given our experience with users, we've found that building calculations in small steps, piece by piece, where at every stage of the operation you can see what's going in and the result, that leads to much greater success. So in order to demonstrate this, I'll give you a small example. We're going to start out with our demo data. The demo data is data that we host on our website that you can use for training and demonstration purposes. You don't have to install anything onto your machine. Now, every time a node is clicked on the canvas, that node and all of its child nodes are evaluated. And so every time we click on any of the nodes that we're going to build, we don't want to make a call out to get the demo data again. So what we'll do is we'll wrap our demo data in a cache node so that the data is cached on the client side, and we only make the AJAX call once. You'll notice that the demo data node itself doesn't have any properties. The cache node, on the other hand, does have properties. And we'll get to the properties of nodes as we go along through this demonstration. Now, we're going to do a simple operation to begin. We've got a table of data, and what we want to do is take this data and group it up by the column country. So in order to do that, we will drop a group by node onto the cache node. And you can see that there are now properties that need to be set in order to get this to work properly. So the group by node needs a column from which to group by and a table from where to get the data. So the table is being provided by the cache node, and the group by, we need to set some properties. So we'll go over here and we'll click into the data column. Now data column is a function that you can use to pick a column out of a table. So we've got a table and we want to pick a column, so we use the data column node and we pick country. We'll go back, and now if you click on the group by node, you can see that our data has been grouped, one data table for each country. Our inspector implements an interesting property in so much as whenever you want to look at a data table, you can click a hyperlink and that will take you into the data for that data table. So you can see that for this data table, the country is nothing but Australia. So we'll go back out. Now, in order to define some more operations, we've now worked with tables a little bit. We've taken our source data and turned it into a new table via the group by operation. Now let's work on a row by row basis. And the easiest way to do that is to illustrate with an add index column node. So we'll drag an add index column node on. You'll see that it takes a table. So we'll drop that on the group by. And we can give this new column a name, but that's about it. So we'll call this my index column. Nice and simple, and not particularly imaginative. So in order to perform a calculation, what we want to do is we want to go for each row in the source table, we want to add a calculation. So let's add a calculated column node. Drag that on there. Again, it uses a table as its source. And this is where things start to get a little bit more interesting. We're going to rename the column my index column times 2, because that's just the way we roll. Now you'll notice that the calculation operates on the current data row. So what that means is this calculation is going to happen once for every row in the table, which seems fairly straightforward. So if we click into the calculation, you can see that the current data row node is there. And what we want to do is we want to, from the current data row, pick out a column. So we go into the data column node, using the data column expression. We want to pick out my index column, because that's what we want to do a calculation with. So we'll go back to our function builder. So now our current data row from the column called my index column shows you the value 1. The reason for that is when we're working with this current data row node concept, we show you the first row in the table as the context for all of these calculations, so you can see what's happening. So now what I want to do is I want to add a calculation, so I'll just add a calculation. And the left side of the calculation is going to be our current data row index column value, which is 1. And then we'll add a number node, and we'll set the value to 2. So the result of the calculation is now the current data row node, my index column, multiplied by 2, because the calculation is, oops, no, we want to change this to multiply. That's fairly straightforward. So the result of the calculation is 2. That seems fairly straightforward. We'll go back, and now if you add calculated column, you click on the add calculated column node, you can see that for every row the calculation was performed and everything is fairly straightforward. Now, that in and of itself isn't particularly interesting, but what we can do is something slightly more exotic by playing around with this data table column. So let's add another calculated column, drop it on there, and this column we'll call total order quantity, because what we want to do is pull out the order quantity for each country. Now we're going to have to get that order quantity from the data table, because remember the data table for just the Australia rows has the column order quantity. So this is what we want to use. So we'll go into the add calculated column. Again, we'll go into the current data row expression. Now this time from the current data row expression, what we want to pull out is the data table. And you can see that now when you click on this, it says data table, but when you go back here and click on the current data row, it shows you all of the values for Australia. Huh, that's kind of neat. So now what we're going to do is we're going to put in a summarize. Drag a summarize node on. Now the summary node takes a table as its data source. We have to pick a calculation type. In this case, we'll do a summary. Again, we want to pick a column, so let's go into data column, and we'll pick, in this case, order quantity. And if we go back out, you can see that the summary now results in the value 91. Because what we've done is for the current data row, from the column data table, that results in all of the rows from Australia. Because remember, each row in the parent table had a data table for all of the rows for just that country. Then we summarized the order quantity column, taking the sum. Huh, that's kind of neat. So now if we go back up to the add calculated column, you'll notice that now the total order quantity for Australia is 91, for Canada is 819, etc., etc. Now let's make this slightly more interesting and add an order by to this. So I'll add an order by node. drag it onto the add calculated column. Now we've got a fair number of columns in here that we can order by. The one that we actually want to use is total order quantity. So we'll add an order by column. Again, the data column node is the one you use to pick a column. So we'll take total order quantity. We'll come back. And what we want to do is take this in descending order because we're going to take the top three. So we go back to our function builder, and now this is ordered descending order. And lastly, we can use a take node and drag a take node on. Now you'll notice that take requires two things, a data table and a quantity. So the data table comes from the order by, and the quantity comes from a number node. And the number in this case is 3. So we click on the take node, and now we have a data table of the data from the United States, Canada, and France, which is our top 3 countries by total order quantity. Now you could use the results of this calculation for generating a cross table. You could, for example, you could turn this into a bar chart if you wanted to. You could take this calculation and generate the number of markers that go on a legend. This concept is everywhere in Chartnado. The idea of taking calculations and building them up slowly and being able to see the output at every stage of the calculation is fundamental to how Chartnado works. And the two things that you have to understand when you're dealing with this function builder system is that you will only ever be dealing with tables and rows. And once you wrap yourself around that, then you are a long way down the road to understanding how Chartnado works. So hopefully that has given you a decent enough overview of the calculation engine that is built into Chartnado. We will be delivering more videos and documentation for the various functions, what they do, what they need, and what they produce. Until then, thanks for watching, and have a good day.